This podcast comes to you from the Pixel Labs podcast studio. As the world of marketing evolves, so must brands when faced with new challenges. We help brands grow by identifying opportunities that have real results. Welcome to the Raising Brand Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Raising Brand Podcast. This is Aaron, and I am a brand strategist for Pixel Labs, and I'm really excited to have back Scott. Welcome to have you back. I'm excited.
Good to be back, Aaron. Thanks.
Just a little refresher for everybody in case you did not see the first episode with Scott. I really encourage you to. Scott is the partner owner of Iowa Media Company that have a couple large social media assets, one being Iowa Chill and one Midwest versus Everybody. And in that episode, we go way back to 2013. That almost feels like hundreds of years ago now, and talking about how long it takes to build a brand, how they were able to be successful in building a brand, that first one being Iowa Chill, and then how they were able to take that and then actually kind of go into the next iteration of their company and introduce Midwest versus Everybody. So if you're at this point in this episode and have not checked that one out, I really encourage you to. But in this one, we actually want to talk a little bit about how to monetize your brand's audience. And Scott is like the guy with this. You know, he's been part of the conversations. They have partnerships now and been very successful. But Scott, I would just be curious if you wanted to kind of open it up and talk about, maybe go back to when was the time you realized that it was time to monetize? And then what was that next step? You know, maybe where were you at? Where were your brand accounts at, following wise? But I just kind of leave it there.
For sure. Well, thanks again for the kind introduction, Aaron, and it's good to be back. But yeah, if you didn't hear the first story, definitely check out that podcast. You'll get a nice intro to this. But I think like you said, we've been doing this for about 10 years. About 5 years ago or so is when the formal LLC business had started, and I think that's really when we dipped our toe in the water and said we're going to monetize this thing. We knew that we wanted to do a Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale and offering that hadn't been done to this audience before, and just kind of prove the concept and determine, okay, can this really be a business for college guys, right? So we got started going there, and the reception was awesome, and it was just the validation that we needed to decide that we were really going to keep running with this and figure out how to be social media influencers. I think from there it really became like building, figuring out how to work sales material into our content on a regular basis with not, it was always in the back of our mind, we don't want to be spammy, right?
Yeah.
We were quick to recognize that like the reason people liked us was because it was all content driven, of course. So if we, poisoned that feed, we're gonna lose followers. So we always wanted to be careful about that and just have that delicate touch. I think if anything, we've determined it's more like a 10-to-1 ratio. If throughout a course of a month, looking at it now at a really high level, but if you can imagine like every 10 posts, then maybe putting out some type of promo material, whether it is for your own merchandise line, whether it is like a sponsored ad or something like that. We kind of use that as a little bit of a baseline. But yeah, moving, I mentioned it on our last episode together, but after the merchandise, the first thing that we try to do is host bar parties. And it's just, again, kind of leveraging that audience, hey, we're going to be at this bar on this night, and how many people can we get in the room to pay the cover fee and run up their tabs.
Was that, sorry, not to interject, but was that
sure.
their idea or was that your idea, the bar's idea or your idea to do that?
It was definitely us coming to them and being like, hey, do we, can we have an avenue to, a venue, I guess, even better term for it, to just host something and see what we can get in, and how can you partner with us on that? We, we've had, just being in the college scene, you always have your bar promoter friends, right? And they're trying to give out free drinks at a certain bar. Like, we knew that we could be that to some degree. But as I said, it really wasn't the route that we determined we wanted to go.
Right.
And then from there, we really tried to figure out how we can, find what we like to call perfect partners. Partners that we can make content and memes and footage with, that is going to feel more like just traditional content in our feed versus an actual like advertisement. And so, long story short here, like 5 years since or 4 years since that kind of realization, we're working with Coors Light as a beer sponsor.
That's huge.
And thanks, man. And yeah, it has been huge. And
Small town Iowa working with Coors Light. That's huge. That's
well,
cool.
I mean, everybody's got a Coors Light in their
I
fridge,
love
right?
Coors Light. Yeah, that's cool.
Thanks, man. So I mean, and it's been great working with them. They're so loyal to our brand as well. Like, it's a awesome kind of relationship that we have with them, where we work with corporate level and their marketing teams, but at the same time we work down with the state level distributors in the area. And I know when those state level distributors and those employees are seeing their brand on our content, it really hits home for them. And that's when they're getting messages from their friends that are saying, "Oh, we saw you on Iowa Chill," and things like that. And like, so they love that kind of thing. And I mean, it's just finding those kinds of partners that it really feels like it's a good fit for everybody. That's really what we're on the hunt for now, and doing that for Iowa Chill, and then of course expanding that to the broader reach that we have in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. You kind of mentioned that. You're like, "Oh, I saw you on that." I saw a post, and I think it's true. People don't hate marketing; they just hate bad marketing. Being interrupted. Advertising that doesn't necessarily apply to them or mean anything to them. But I think about if they really enjoy Iowa Chill and they see a post about Coors Light that's within the right context and is funny and true to kind of what your messaging is and also what Coors is, like, they're going to eat it up. Why would they not love that? And so that's really something special there. And I have to think that that's so rewarding. Sometimes I imagine after watching a commercial, what was the conversation around the boardroom table that led to that? Because that was awful. And so I think about when you're in those meetings with those folks, though, it has to be so fun. Like, just talking about like what you can do, because they get it. They get the importance of not being spammy or salesy. So that has to be a blast.
Without a doubt. I mean, that's really my background is coming from a little bit more as traditional as digital marketing can be, those kinds of environments where you have that agency and client relationship, where it is all dollars, cents. How will this marketing strategy get us ROI?
Yeah.
Those perfect partners, when we find them, they're people that understand that it is just like, it's a billboard and it's a funny one. It's supposed to be it's supposed to be the front page of the newspaper. It's not somebody signed up and bought something the second they saw this, but it's establishing that brand with our brand and that lifestyle that we've kind of been able to own.
Right. Well, and you want them to, and especially for a beverage company where it's so competitive. I mean, you go to a gas station or something, and all the options that are there. I mean, you can go in front of any of those doors and pick whatever you want. But if you've seen enough, or if you've created that loyalty, I'm gonna grab a Coors Light because that sounds awesome. Awesome. Only drink if you're over 21 though, so I don't know if that.
Very good. Very responsible.
Is there anything do you have to do stuff like that in the posts or anything, just out of curiosity?
Nothing that we've been asked to do.
Okay.
We certainly rely on the legal departments of our clients to be able to help us, and we're very transparent about that. They know we're obviously not their first influencer that they've worked with, and
sure.
it's really incredible to see like brands like that, the way that they want to make those kinds of influencer deals, and it's been quite a learning experience to see like how they've kind of been approached. Obviously, like anyone's an influencer, they want to go grab to find the big brands, call them up, and if you can pitch it, say, here's what I want to offer you. I think my background comes from a little bit different perspective, where I'm able to really lay out and articulate exactly what a prospect, potential perfect partner of ours is getting from our audience in terms of impressions, and then that expected engagement that is really the baseline of our success.
Yeah, well, and I also think you've just proved that over time that what you need to do to get that. And so what I think is interesting too is when you're, and the reason I asked the question about the bars, if you reached out or if they reached out, influencers especially, or folks that even just have an audience, sometimes don't recognize the value that they have. And it doesn't take, I think it's pretty amazing with your own too, with your audience too, because you talk about, them showing up to events, them buying stuff. And that's really the test of the brand is, one, would they follow you anywhere? So say your stuff gets shut down, are they going to be wherever you are at, or are they going to buy stuff from you? You can have 1 million followers, but if none of them care,
Right.
it doesn't matter. And we've seen it, even at a very local level where somebody with less than, I think actually now they're over 2,000 followers, but they're getting legit sponsorships because it's 2,000 followers, but it's 2,000 people who are hyper local, so it's very
Right.
localized, and they just love this person. And so, your numbers are far higher than that, and so you're at a different level, but I just think it just takes reaching out, trying the bar thing, not being afraid to go up and ask somebody because you never know. And so with your Coors Light, I'd just be was that something that again you reached out and talked about, or is that one that came in?
Yeah, I guess I don't exactly remember.
Okay.
I think it was probably more proactive, if anything, of us reaching out, trying to start the conversation. Just again to the nature of who these partners are that we want to work with. We had been posting about them organically anyway, right? And other beer companies. Now we're a little bit more careful about that since we've established a partnership. But we recognized that they opened the door for us because we had made an effort to post about them before we were even, talking to them, right? Like it wasn't out of the blue that we were going to work with them. This was truly a great relationship because it was, this market area, and again, kind of like you were talking about localized. If you can choose a, approach to spending marketing dollars, and that your initiative's focus and typically it's geographical states and territories, being able to say Iowa Chilled, they're just Iowans, we want to put our money on that square, that put us in a really good spot. So but yeah, I think that's a great point about the localization approach. Even 2,000 followers today, you can now get these kinds of brand deals, and those powerhouse brands that respect that influencer reach and affinity that those audiences have with the influencer. They're doing some really cool stuff to incentivize those influencers, I would say. We recently were invited to Quick Trip's Media Day. So they're also a partner of ours, and there's a convenience store damn near on every single block in Iowa. Thanks, powering the farmers. They got to go out, the hunters, everything that everyone's doing all the
Early
time.
morning
Right?
Quick Trip runs, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, you might have to drive 15, 20 minutes for a Walmart, but there's always a Quick Trip out back, right?
Yeah.
It was really fascinating to see how billion-dollar company, right? 30,000 plus employees.
Wow.
And they're right here in the Midwest, and they did this media day to reach out with influencers. I think there was probably 30 of us that they invited.
Oh, wow.
And media networks. So like around here, just like your local news stations and things like that, but across all the Midwest, right? All the different ones.
And where is this taking place?
This is in La Crosse, Wisconsin,
Okay.
at their HQ. So they invited us all out. They actually, they put us up in hotels and everything. They took really, really good care of us.
Awesome.
And there's just like seeing the way that they as a brand respect the media opportunity that we have and the reach that we have is like, this is a really good space right now. It's a really good place to be. I think it was really cool, like seeing the way that they talked about radio DJs, and they said that if we look at it, they're really the first influencer. So we got a lot of respect for those folks because
oh my gosh, yeah.
You look at a TV network and you got content, which is the shows and programming, and you got commercials, and there's not much else in between there. Maybe you have a news station, but for the most part, it's just those two mediums. But when you look at like a radio station, it's the content, music, and shows. It's the advertisements, but there's also this speaker, this host, this DJ that's kind of the influencer of why you're listening to what you're listening to.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of really cool to hear, again, huge brand. Sometimes you think these folks are a little bit kind of stale and slow moving, but they're being very progressive on how they're working with social media influencers and influencers in general, right? That's really cool to see.
Well, so you got to mingle with those other folks then?
Yeah,
That's gotta be cool.
Yeah, it's it was pretty funny. You know, you get a lot of those folks in the room who's listening to Who. Yeah, everyone's like, look at me, I'm the
Right.
influencer.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. Oh my
we
gosh.
tried to avoid that as much as possible, but
Well, and I think, and we've already talked about this a couple times, but you don't have any of your faces as a part of the brand, and so I think that that's always very interesting, because that's tough. I mean, to do that, and you've done that in a special way, and we've talked about that in that other episode. We talked specifically about that, how you've been able to create engagement. One thing I want to touch on that I think is really special about what you've shared is the idea of a perfect partner. I know my brother actually just got a deal. He has a good TikTok following and actually just got a deal. But the importance of reading through the contract, knowing who you're working with, and you got treated really well because that's a really good partner, and you took the time to build that. Can you share a little bit about or share any advice about when somebody approaches you or you approach somebody, maybe what some red flags are in a potential partnership?
yeah, I guess I can't really. We've been fortunate, on that side of the table. A lot of the people that we've worked with have been really reputable,
Awesome.
partners. I would say, and I can't think of anything that's been too much of a red flag. But from our perspective of us, hunting, looking for these kinds of opportunities, I think the biggest thing is laying out expectations and trying to do it in a way that's more professional than the next guy, because social media influencing, it is still kind of a wild west, right? You can say anything. I'm going to post this and I'm going to get you 1 million followers, and all right, here's the cash. Can I see the analytics? Like, oh yeah, here's a Photoshop file of whatever. Like, you don't know what you're getting unless you can really sell it these days. So I mean, it's just really about that, and again, I think one of the cool things I picked up at this Quick Trip media day was when I asked them what they were looking for when they try to choose influencers, and it was we look for people that are already posting about our content. And I think I mentioned that on the last episode or maybe earlier in this one, but when we look for those perfect partners, we want it to be somebody that's already kind of been popping up into our timeline the whole time.
Just makes sense.
And then hearing that validation from, corporate company, corporate marketing department saying something like that to us, it's just like, okay, this is the right way to go about it, and just show them what you got, show them your hand, and then if you can make a deal. I mean, it's good old fashioned Midwest manners, right?
Right. Well, and wow, that's special. So it really isn't an advertisement at all. It's just we see the value that you are already giving us, and it's almost like we want to reward you for it. Of course, there's things to put in there, but that is awesome. Do you feel like that's the majority of the time folks are at that level where they're understanding all that? Quick Trip just seems to be killing it in terms of what they're doing and what they're looking for.
I think Quick Trip is far and above in that sense. They're at least. I mean, I haven't been to many of those kinds of media days, but just them being able to put that on and share with that, and again, just the generosity and the hospitality they gave us. It was an investment in us being a long-term partner for them, and it was just like so cool to see. They told us a story when they were there about an unhappy customer, I'll call it, that they had that had purchased something from them, and they took it back and said, smell this, it's spoiled. Cash register says, go grab 2 more, we'll give you a $10 gift card, get on your way, sorry for the inconvenience. They're like, well, that was a pretty decent experience, yada yada. They told they come back home, tell their husband about the experience, and like, why would you take it to Quick Trip? They weren't the ones I bought that from. Like, oh, but they replaced it. And so she runs back to Quick Trip the next day, and she says, I just had to say, I don't think this was right. You guys did me too well. I didn't even get this from here. But they're like, yeah, I know that, but we wanted to make sure that you knew what it was like to have a really good product.
Wow. And
so he's like, the CEO is kind of telling us this story, and he's like, that $15 investment into that customer's experience that day turned them into, on average, a $42,000 lifetime client of ours.
Wow.
And it's just like, that really resonated, especially when the way that they treated us as influencers there. They wanted us to be their lifetime customer, their lifetime influencer. And it showed. It was really cool to see brands respect that influencer game like that.
Mm-hmm. That's like almost one of those like goosebumps stories. You know what I mean? Like,
I know. It was cool to hear it come straight from them. And
yeah.
I mean, they'd probably jump in this room with you and tell you the story 10 times better, right?
Gosh.
But
well,
because they take it very seriously.
Cool. So very, I'm just thinking very tactically now. If I can talk, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody's looking at pursuing some of those partnerships or wondering even if they're at a point that they could be pursuing those partnerships, would you have any guidance for them or any advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to just your average reach on a daily or monthly basis, and what your impression counts, just all those baseline metrics of what the internet says it means to be an influencer these days. Shopify, the staple name and having an online e-commerce store, they wrote a manual that says this is how much you pay for an influencer for this size, right? And like it's just 5 bullet points. If you're over 5 million impressions a month, you're making $50K a post, right? Their rule or their law or their rule is law, right?
Yeah. That's great because I actually didn't know about that. And so
I mean they have all those kinds of resources out there, and it's not like you take it. You have to take it word for word for that, but it's a great baseline. And when you're in charge of the media, you can kind of position it and say, well, I guess we got to eat this month. Maybe we can give them a little bit better deal than what the going rate is according to Shopify.
Right.
Or if it's going to be a 12-month relationship versus a single post, maybe we give them a little bit of a different kind of a rate. I think that's a really big thing to keep in mind, because a lot of these deals, I think, especially the ones that maybe weren't so much as the perfect partner, the longer term relationships where they do fall in line. There was a lot of like hesitation. Is this going to work? I'm going to pay you $5,000. You're going to get me 1 million impressions, but am I going to sell anything? And the fact of the matter is, maybe not this time. Like, it's hard for us to tell. This is so much more of a branding and developing that brand loyalty and affinity with products that come across our timeline and content to our audience. But so
no, and I think that's great. And I'll recap one that you said earlier that I also think is important. But the being professional. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These are businesses. They want your personality to come through. They would they always want to see that.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're funny, they probably would expect you to be a little funny when you're talking with them.
Yeah, no doubt.
But, I even like the importance of, it doesn't have to be a crazy nice email signature, but just like small stuff to dress yourself up a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. That's why we reach out as the Iowa Media Company and not Iowa Chill, right?
I was wondering about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big part of it, and it's just, putting your best foot forward to make a good partnership.
Awesome. Well, hey, Scott, thank you so much for sitting down again. This was very valuable, and I think you shared a lot. First of all, it's just fun. It's just fun to listen to. It's interesting to listen to, but also just like the little nuggets you shared about what it looks like to establish partnerships, how a good partner will treat you, and what you should expect from a partnership. I think one thing that folks often forget too is, while they are providing the service, they have to be in a good relationship. It should be. You talked about, is this going to work? Is this going to work? If it's not driving, I mean, you should there's a point where you probably should exit. And so, but. No, thank you again. Is there anything else that you have to share about any of this? Or?
No, I think this is awesome. I appreciate it and looking forward to next time too.
Awesome. Well, take care, everybody. And thank you for joining in. We've always appreciate your attention and time at the Raising Brand Podcast, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Raising Brand Podcast, powered by Pixel Labs. Remember to subscribe to stay up to date on all things Raising Brand.